I'm not here to talk about frame rates. I'm not here to talk about the updated graphics or the addition of voice acting. I think we can all tell what the really obvious differences are between old games and new games, right? I want to talk about some things that I've noticed when I'm playing, as I'm playing more retro games lately that are a little bit more subtle, I guess. I've never really given this topic that much thought, you know, in my brain I'm always like, games are games. Doesn't matter when a game came out, right? Right? And this also isn't like a rip on older games or a rip on newer games by any means. I definitely think that older games and newer games, they each have their own strengths and their own weaknesses. But as I get into more retro games, I'm kind of noticing a pattern with myself. That has also made me notice a pattern with newer games. And that is, the games don't just look different, they don't just sound different. The games, the way that they were made, the way that they were structured, the way they were created to make you think, their play style, everything is so different. And you might be like, duh. But the thing is, I noticed this subconsciously, but I just never really gave it that much thought. Why do I feel so different playing an older, more retro game versus a newer modern game? The whole reason I'm actually making this video is because I recently picked up Ocarina of Time again, and I'm actually really enjoying it and actually making decent progress through the game. But I haven't really played an older game in like a hot second. So I was going through it and I was like, why do I need help in this section? This game was literally made for kids back in the day. Why am I needing to look up a guide for where to get this certain bag in this certain dungeon? And I realized, and this goes for pretty much all of the older games I've ever played, older games do not hold your hand, like at all. And newer games hold your hand as much as they possibly can. The hand holding is unreal. In older games, you don't have, I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions to this rule, right? But in older games, for the most part, in the ones I've played, you don't really have quest logs. You don't really have NPCs that like run up to you and tell you everything you need to know and everything you need to do. They don't have, if you drop the game for a month and then you come back to it, they don't have like a little refresher, a little like, oh, by the way, this is where you left off. They don't have a summary. They don't have nothing. Whereas with new games, there is always something that is telling you where you need to go, what you need to do, who you need to talk to. There's a marker on the minimap. There's a marker on an NPC. There's so many things that try to make the game as easy as possible. And again, there are also exceptions to this rule for modern games. There are some modern games that aren't always like this, but most of them are. I think most of them are. I don't really know why this is, and I think one of like the base examples is like the Resident Evil yellow tape syndrome. This like yellow tape thing is leaking into other games, or like these markers of like, hey, this is where you need to go next, instead of just letting the player explore and like figure out what they need to do on their own. That's a very new modern game thing. And I think in a way it is like depleting my critical thinking skills a little bit. Because I find myself playing an older game and I'm like, where's the NPC that's supposed to come up and talk to me and tell me what to do next? Where's my mini-map with my little marker telling me where to go? Where's my quest log? Why doesn't Link keep a notebook in this game? The amount of times I've looked something up, and not just in this particular game, like I'm not still talking about Ocarina of Time, but yeah, Ocarina of Time and all the other older games, when I've looked up a guide, I'm like, that was actually kind of obvious. Why didn't I just think of that? Or why didn't I just go and explore that cave? Why didn't I just go pick up this item? Why didn't I just go talk to this NPC? And it's because I'm so used to having my handheld. No, not this handheld. I'm so used to having my handheld through every little side quest or boss battle or, you know, just general exploration. And I don't think this is necessarily a good thing. Like I said, I think it's zapping my critical thinking skills. I'm not really allowed to think for myself, or it's not that I'm not allowed to, it's that I don't have to, and therefore I won't. Because if there's a marker or an NPC telling me to, that's basically like shouting at me to go over here, oh, you need to go find this item in this little temple, like go over here, I'll mark it on the mini map for you. Why would I bother like trying to find it myself? Like, the game is telling me where I need to go, what I need to do. I might as well follow instructions. But that's not always what gaming was about. I think that older games really give you that sense of independence and that sense of like, you gotta figure things out, bro. Like, we're not gonna tell you what to do. Sure, they can give hints, like Navi can like speak, like talk in your ear and be like, hey, I wonder what this character thinks about this. And it's like, okay, yeah, fine. I probably have to go talk to that character. But it's just little hints. It's just like every once in a while, because you can get really, really stuck in old games thinking like, I don't know what the heck to do. When I first played FF7 Original, I was playing through it and then I dropped it for like a month. And when I came back to it, I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I could not remember the last thing that I did. I was just basically running around the world map, trying to remember the last thing I did, trying to get a cutscene to trigger, trying to get a character to say something unique that I hadn't seen before. I eventually had to look up a guide and just try to remember what the last thing that I did was and go from there. And I figured it out, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't have that difficulty outside of older games. In a new game, when you drop it for a month and you come back in, you just check your quest log, you just talk to a character nearby, anything that's like that. It's basically gonna help you out. It's gonna be like, by the way, this is where your journey left off. And that in of itself also makes me think how I don't think older games were designed to just be dropped or just be like set aside for a month and then picked back up. Like, if you think about it, a lot of people, and especially in like the YouTube gaming space, I feel like we're all playing a bunch of games at the same time. Or we just have a huge backlog and we're like kind of trying a game here and there and we just have all of these unfinished games, right? We have so many options that we kind of just do that automatically, I think. With older games, and back in the day, it was more of a big deal when a game came out. I think that not a lot of people were playing like 5 different games at the same time. Once a game dropped and you were excited about it, you would play it. You would play it every second you could until you finished it. And so I don't think people really needed to be reminded of where they were in a game. I could be totally wrong about that. If you grew up in the 90s and you have experience with games, like, tell me how it was for you. But that's just the impression that I get of like, I think game developers nowadays realize that people aren't just gonna sink hours and hours right off the bat into a game, and so they have to make sure that like once the player comes back, they're not gonna be so confused to the point where they don't even want to play the game ever again. That makes sense to me. There are so many games that they're competing with. All of the games are competing for your attention. They want to make your transition back into it as seamless as possible. So yeah, now when I play an older game, I am thrown into this completely different mindset of like, okay, I have to scour this village, I have to scour this kingdom, I have to go talk to every NPC. That's the other thing. When I was looking up a guide for a certain area in Ocarina of Time, call me stupid, I don't care. Like, yes, I look up guides for Ocarina of Time, okay. I was on a Reddit forum and one person was like, just so you know, I don't know if he said like in the older games or in the older Zelda games, the NPCs are really important. You need to talk to every NPC you see. What? I have to talk to all of the NPCs? The NPCs that I usually just ignore in all of my newer games? I have to talk to them? Ew. No, seriously, I'm so used to just ignoring NPCs because NPCs in newer games are just fluff. They're just background characters for the most part. Going up and talking to every NPC in a new video game is a chore. It is not fun because most NPCs don't give you anything of sustenance anymore. At least that's how I feel. They're literally called NPCs. Like when we say, oh, that person's such an NPC, it's like, you know what you're implying. So yeah, it just floored me that I was like, oh my gosh, I actually have to talk to other characters in this game? Like, I'm so used to being told like, oh, you just have to talk to this one NPC. You just have to talk to this one character. And here's exactly where they are on this convenient map. So it's really different going from that to being spawned in like this village or this field or whatever, this castle, and you're like, okay, who do I talk to? Like, I gotta go find this, whatever person I'm looking for. I gotta go talk to this NPC. Maybe this person is going to tell me everything I need to know. And now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure, like, we talk about how with newer games, they don't really provide little guides or little pamphlets anymore. You know how you get an older game and it comes with this cute little illustrated guide and it tells you about all the characters and the general story and it gives you some tips, right? Modern games don't have that as much, and I think it's because all of that is like stuffed into the actual game times 10. And so now I'm realizing, okay, that's why they had these cute little guides and they put them in all of the older games, because that was basically all the help that you could get back then. It's either that, or if you had an online forum that you could possibly find. They weren't as common back then, but if you could find that, maybe that could help you. Or you would literally have to know somebody that has beaten that game or that certain area of the game that you're stuck in. You have to ask them for help. That's crazy to me. Like, you're telling me I can't just look things up on the internet? Because nowadays there's a guide for every single game under the sun. It could be the most obscure game, and somebody will have a full-fledged guide and playthrough and walkthrough of it on YouTube. That's just crazy to me because I've only ever grown up in a time where I've had the internet to answer any question I've had about anything. The next thing I want to talk about is tutorials in older games versus newer games, because I think this one is where it gets a little bit like, I think that generally because newer games are so, like, they want to get your attention, they want to make sure that you understand the game so that you don't get frustrated and quit. I think that tutorials, for the most part, have gotten better. I think that they really want you to understand the mechanics in and out, no matter how annoying it can be sometimes. Whereas with older tutorials, I feel like, I don't know if it was just because, I mean, obviously they didn't have the technology to give a fully animated explanation or like have a character talk in your ear about all the different buttons you can push and all the different combinations you can do. But I feel like my understanding of older tutorials, some people are gonna get this and some people are gonna laugh at me, but there is this meme where it is like, it goes something like this. It's like, please do not try to explain a card game to me. I will literally pass out. And that is so true. I literally, when somebody tries to just explain to me how a card game is played, I literally can't keep up. Everything that they're telling me just goes straight over my head. I think I personally learn better by watching somebody else or actively diving in and doing it myself, as opposed to somebody just giving me a straight verbal explanation. And I think it's kind of the same for older games and their tutorials, where they can just do a lot of explaining, a lot of text blocks on screen. They tell you what buttons to press, but that's about it. Whereas newer games are actively giving you like a visual guide of what to do along with the text blocks most of the time. They have the technology now to do that. So it's not necessarily the older game's fault for having more crude tutorials in that sense, and that's just my opinion. And honestly, it's also just my learning style. Like, I think newer tutorials help me to understand how to play a game better, and older tutorials, and I want to give it an example, right? FF8, Final Fantasy VIII. I played it on the Switch earlier this year, and when they were first prompting me with the junction system tutorial, once the in-game tutorial was done, I stared at the screen for a few minutes and I was like, what? I did not understand a single thing they were trying to tell me with that tutorial. And the whole tutorial is literally just like a bunch of pop-up text that's kind of showing you things in your inventory and like different stats and stuff, but it's like, the junction system I think is so confusing already, and then having that kind of tutorial for it, I had to go on YouTube and look up another tutorial for it. And I don't have to do that very often with games in general. And I don't think I'm entirely alone on that, because I think a lot of the comments on that video agreed with me, because I was like, am I just stupid? Like, I think some people are like, oh, I love the junction system, it's so easy for me to understand. But I think the reason they didn't continue with the junction system in other FF games is because it was a tad confusing. It was, but that's for a different video. That's just an example of a tutorial that I think like fits what I'm talking about. But yeah, again, that's like the best that they could do. Like, they can't just fully animate a tutorial or like, you know? Another thing that I've noticed with older games is that I feel, I mean, you can obviously tell that older controllers and newer controllers, they look very different. Newer controllers have a lot more buttons. They usually have a lot more functions. But I never noticed this before either. I feel like when I'm playing a new game, I'm like pressing 50 buttons at one time if I'm like fighting a boss. I'm like trying to do all these crazy combos, and I'm trying to like open my menu at the same time, and I'm trying to like do this combo and like fight with this character. And with older games, I like, even when I'm fighting, I'm just, for the most part, I'm just pressing like 1 or 2 buttons. Like, it feels a lot more simple and fair. It's an older game. Like, it's technically going to be simpler. It's just weirder. And I mean, I think you could argue that that's not always the case for newer games. I think some newer games are perfect examples of just like, you can just mash one button and get through the entire game. But for the most part, if you want to fully utilize like a battle system, you're gonna be using like pretty much the entire controller for the most part. Yeah, like I said, there are definitely exceptions to all of these on both sides. But I think that just in general, these things kind of hold true for a lot of older and newer games. Because when I'm playing an older game and I can't figure something out to the point where I have to look up a guide on it, I'm like, am I just stupid? Or is it really not obvious what I'm supposed to be doing? And the answer to that is yes, like, I am a dumb girl, okay? Like, I fully admit that. But at the same time, my brain, when I'm playing a game, it's wired to expect a certain level of handholding, a quest log, a mini-map, anything. And so taking all of that away and just spawning me in to like the Wild West, where I could do anything that I want, technically, it's definitely an adjustment. I think that older games were way better for our brains. I think that they make you use your critical thinking skills way more. I think they are wired and structured to make you think outside of the box. And I think that's really good. Like, I think that that is what our brains need. I don't think you need to automatically just like be told everything that you need to do and just turn your brain off when you're playing a video game. And I guess I'm kind of not giving new games enough credit either, because I think there is something to be said. I think there was like this study that showed that like surgeons or doctors, the more video games that they play, like the better they performed at their jobs and during surgery. And I think that that has a lot to do with like hand-eye coordination and reaction time, because for newer games, it definitely takes, like, newer games are pretty fast, and like especially battle systems, and like you usually have to be quick on your feet and like very hand-eye coordinated with the controller. And so I'm not saying that newer games are just like shut your mind off, be dumb for an hour or two. Like, I'm not trying to rip that away from new games entirely. I'm just saying I think that they are structured very differently. They prioritize different things. I think that's interesting. It just, and I'm not really, this video is not about older games were so much better and newer games suck. Like, I love a lot of newer games, right? And I love a lot of older games. Again, they both have their strengths. They both have their weaknesses. It's just funny to me because I never really thought about how intrinsically different that they were. Anyways, duh, like, some of you are like, duh, I already knew this. Okay, then why are you still in this video, bro? Like, you're smarter than me, I get it. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that was just like a word vomit of like what I have been thinking playing an older game, because my brain is freaking out. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this random video. Resident Evil 2 Part 2 is coming out soon on my other channel. Thanks for watching. and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!